Everyone, it's Becca again, the voice teacher at Rawk, here to do another free weekly live stream voice lesson. So, we started last week by talking a ton about breath control and support, and also talking about how to access different spaces inside of your mouth to make singing certain notes easier. I know that sometimes watching video lessons can be a little frustrating. Sometimes maybe it feels like the exercises are going too high. Sometimes maybe it feels like I'm moving too quickly. I just want to put out there that I am open for private instruction sessions, can do 30 minutes, can do an hour, and that Rawk U is offering a special 25% off of your first month of lessons during quarantine. So I'd be super happy to meet with anybody one-on-one who's feeling like they need a little more attention. If you are feeling like you need to ever drop out or you need to be singing lower than I'm playing, you can always take a break. You can always drop the octave. And of course, I always recommend, if your voice is feeling fatigued, taking a moment, sipping some water, and just giving yourself a little break, because it's really important to be able to listen to your body when it's sending you a message about fatigue like that. So I want to start sort of similarly to how I started last week by helping to get everybody in touch with their breath. So I want to start by having everybody take a couple of deep inhales and exhales. Something you might not know about me is that I'm also a yoga teacher, so I pay a ton of attention to the way that we're breathing and how we can use our breath to help support our good vocal technique. So I'm going to adjust my camera just like I did last week and start to talk about where we want to feel these inhales and exhales that we're taking. So here we go. I'm showing you my ribs and my belly so you can see what I have going on here. Sorry about the mess behind me. So when we inhale, we don't want to feel our inhale going into our shoulders at all. We want to keep our shoulders still and we want to keep our neck relaxed. I like to place my hands either on my low ribs, my short ribs, so not up high, but nice and low. Or sometimes I'll place a hand over my belly button so I can really feel whether or not my belly is expanding. When we inhale, we want to feel the belly expand. And we also want to feel some expansion from those low ribs. When we exhale, we want to feel ourselves pushing from those low belly muscles, trying not to collapse through our ribs, trying to keep a lot of open space through the ribs. So a lot of times, a fun fact that I like to share is that a common technique for voice teachers used to be to have students grab opposite elbows behind their back to keep the chest open during breathing and during singing. I think that that's not super effective now because I do think that it throws the spine a little bit out of alignment, but I like the visual of kind of having a little external rotation, having space across the front of the body. So if you feel comfortable and it feels okay for you to grab opposite elbows, feel free to give it a shot just so you can feel that space across the front of your body. Let's take a deep inhale into our belly and let's just let it out on a sigh. Let's do that 2 more times. Nice deep inhale into the belly. And let it out on a nice long sigh. 1 more time. Deep inhale into the belly. And sigh it out. Now, to add a little resistance, to make this a little bit more challenging for the breath, I want to add a hiss, just like we did last week. So take a deep inhale in and hiss it out for as long as you can. Again, let's do it 2 more times. Inhale deeply and hiss it out for as long as you can. One more time. Inhale deeply and hiss it out for as long as you can. Go ahead and take a break. Feel free to take a sip of water, anything you need. I'm going to introduce one new breathing exercise today. This one I think is super helpful for onset. Now, onset is the moment that we start singing. So when we go from just standing in a neutral position, breathing, speaking, anything, as soon as we begin to sing, we refer to that as our onset. So our onset is really important. We want to try not to work very hard in the throat, and we want to try not to work too hard with anything in the mouth or the jaw either. So one really helpful way to get ourselves to control our onset using our breath is to teach ourselves how to break up the breath without involving the throat and without involving the mouth. Now, this can be weirdly challenging. So if you find yourself running into some roadblocks with this, don't judge yourself. Let yourself work through it. So we're going to take a deep breath in. And we're going to break our exhale into 4 hisses. So I'll demonstrate it one time. Big breath in. And then we're going to exhale. So some things you might notice. For a lot of people, they tend to control their hisses either from their tongue, adding like a T at the beginning of the hiss, or from the throat, using pressure from the throat. So I'll demo each of these once or twice just so you can kind of see what they sound like. Maybe even you can see what's happening in my neck or in my jaw while I'm doing it. So first I'll demonstrate starting the hiss with the tongue or adding a T in front of it. So I'm taking my big inhale. So in this version, I'm allowing the air to kind of build up in my mouth, but I'm using my tongue to start and stop it rather than using these muscles down here. And that's why you're getting that T sound at the beginning. Versus controlling it with the throat, which is the other common mistake that people make. I'll demonstrate that now. Taking a big inhale and using the throat to control it. You may be able to hear kind of that little interruption in the sound, and I'll demo one more time doing it smoothly with the breath. Now feel free to do this with me. I'm going to do it 3 times so you can jump in whenever you feel ready. So here's the first one. Taking a deep inhale in, and splitting the breath into 4 parts. You can also see probably that my belly is working a little, even though it's out of frame. We're going to do 2 more. Big inhale in. And 1 more. Big inhale in. Now you might start to feel that a little bit in your belly. And if you are, that's a good thing. It means you're building a little bit of strength and control down there. So now that we've warmed up our breath, we've gotten our breath synchronized, we know what's going on with our belly muscles, let's do a little bit of singing. We're going to start nice and low. I want to sing nice and slidey. Find a big yawn space in your mouth. Each inhale, inhale into your ah vowel. And then let your voice occupy that same relaxed and open space that you find in your inhale. So just like last week, I'll demo once and then I'll say it's your turn and I'll play it on the piano so you can follow along super easily. So we're going to start nice and low. So inhale nice and deep. Ya. Your turn. Let's come up. Ya. Your turn. Ya. Your turn. Couple more. Ya. Your turn. Continue coming up. Notice I'm not spreading into a smile space at all. Yeah. I'm allowing my mouth to stay pretty rounded. Yeah. I always encourage my students to kind of cheat towards an A-W vowel rather than A-H, because that rounded space elongates the amount of space that our voice has to bounce around in our mouth before it exits. So it gets to be a little stronger, a little warmer, a little more relaxed sounding overall. So give yourself that nice A-W. Yaw. Your turn. Let's come up. Yaw. Your turn. Continuing to come up. Yaw. Your turn. Really keep those low belly muscles supporting those high notes. Try not to flex here or do any extra work in your throat to get you up to those high notes. Just drop your jaw, use that yawn space in the back, and let your breath do all the work for you, getting you up there. That'll protect your voice from getting fatigued, and it'll also help with your sound on those high notes. Let's keep coming up. Yaw. Very supported from the belly. Your turn. Continuing up. Yaw. Keep the tongue relaxed. Keep the throat relaxed. Your turn. Let's do a couple more. Yaw. Your turn. Big breath in. As we're getting higher up here, make sure you're opening your mouth even more than you think that you have to. I always tell my students to exaggerate the amount of space that you think you need, because it usually actually is a little bit more than you think. We're going to keep coming up. We're going to do about 2 or 3 more nice and high. Drop the jaw as much as you can. Sometimes I have my students do Home Alone face, so they can really tell that the jaw is dropped and they're not closing it as they're singing. A more like gentle, less touching your face version of that I sometimes do is I just gently will pinch the corners of my mouth so that I know I'm not spreading. So feel free to try either of those at home. We're going to do a couple more of these ahs. Yaw. Your turn. Big breath in. And 2 more high. Yaw. Your turn. Big breath in. And last one up here. Yaw. Your turn. Big breath in. Give yourself a moment, take a break, take a sip of water, anything that you feel like you need. I'm going to take us in a new direction right now. We're going to work a little with the E vowel, which we did do a little bit of last week. But just like last week, we're going to add a consonant in front of the E vowel to help get the breath moving and to help our onset feel a little smoother and easier. Last week, we added a V, which gives us a little resistance and allows our body to have to push a little more air to make that sound. And if you want to revisit that exercise, I encourage you to revisit the lesson from last week on our YouTube channel. But I want to introduce something new to you this week. So we're going to do, I'll demo it once. We're going to use a an M. And we want to really, just like with the V consonant, we want to really give a bunch of time to the consonant before we open into the vowel. Relax the jaw. Even though we're doing a an M, we want the teeth to be parted. We don't want our jaw to be locked. So it's almost like you have an ah space inside your mouth, but then your lips are together to create that M sound. Again, I'll demo. We're going to start nice and low and easy. We're going to go me, me, me. So we really want to feel nice and low and relaxed in these bottom notes. We want to feel how low the throat sits, how much we can just use the breath to do all the work for us. You should feel no pinching, no extra work happening in your throat, no tension in your jaw, no tension in your mouth. Really let the breath do all of the work for you on this. So I'll demo it again, and then I'll say your turn, and you can jump in. Me, me, me. Your turn. Let's come up. Me, me, me. Your turn. Coming up once again, keep yourself relaxed as we come higher. Maybe you feel like you move a little more air, that's totally fine, but you shouldn't feel any extra effort happening in the neck or the throat at all. Try to keep it mellow and relaxed, just like speaking feels. Me, me, me. Your turn. Continuing to come up, keep it mellow. Me, me, me. Your turn. Nice and easy. Me, me, me. Your turn. We're going to keep coming up higher. Maybe you're dropping your jaw a little extra to give yourself some more space on these higher notes. Maybe you're focusing on keeping your throat really relaxed. Maybe you're focusing on your breath. Maybe you have the mental space to focus on all three. Good for you if that's the case. Let's keep going. Me, me, me. Your turn. Coming up two more. Me, me, me. Your turn. Me, me, me. Your turn. Now, before we go any higher, I want to connect this idea back to those hisses that we did at the beginning of the lesson. Now, with those hisses, we were using our breath to separate them from each other. We were trying really hard not to control it from the throat and not to control it from the jaw. So I want to bring back that idea. With each note that you start, let it come from the belly. Let it come from the breath. Don't control it from here. Try not to control it from here. These things can be a little challenging and sometimes hard to grasp. In an in-person lesson, it's really easy for me to point out when I can hear people doing onsets in a way that doesn't make sense. But sometimes it can be a little tough to self-diagnose. I think that some things that we want to watch out for are if we're stopping our sound by closing our mouth. For example, if I was going, me, me, you should be able to keep your mouth open and stop your sound on your own. Another thing that we want to watch out for is what's called a glottal stop. Now, a glottal stop is when we start and stop our sound or our breath using the glottis or the throat. So we hear this all the time, and I think that one of the most common places that we hear it is when we say a word that starts with a vowel. Really common to start it with a glottal stop. So often I have people say, uh-oh, uh-oh, and feel how you stop those vowels using the throat. Uh-oh, in between those two syllables. We feel that little impulse from the throat, and it's okay when we're speaking, and it can be occasionally done okay when we're singing as well, but we don't want it to be a habit that gets out of hand, because when we create a glottal stop, we're snapping the vocal folds together, and the air is stopping because the vocal folds are snapped together. So it's just a lot of pressure to put on a really tiny muscle when we can use these much bigger and stronger muscles lower down in our bellies to control our sound much better and in a way that's not going to be fatiguing. So if you're feeling like any kind of impulse or sound happening that's coming from down here, uh-oh, or if you're feeling like you have to close your mouth in order to stop your sound, that's a good indication that you're not totally in touch with your breath. And maybe you want to go back in this video a little bit and practice some of those hissing exercises so that you can really get used to starting and stopping your breath effectively without involving anything up here. Because if we don't need it to breathe, we don't need it to sing. So we're trying not to add extra tension. So with all that said, I want to jump back into the exercise that we were just doing. Again, trying to make sure as best as we can that we're starting it from our breath rather than from the throat or from the mouth. Me, me. Your turn. Let's keep going. Me, me. Your turn. I want to do 3 or 4 more of these. You might notice that I'm taking a little inhale in between them. Me, me. And I'm doing that not because I really need the air, which I'm sure you may not either, but I'm doing it because an inhale can help us to open up the mouth and the throat a little and can help to relax everything in the throat down a little. So it's a nice refreshing feeling to take that little tiny inhale, kind of reset into a really relaxed place, and then allow ourselves to sing into that really relaxed place after our inhale. So feel free to use that trick if you'd like. Me, me. Your turn. Let's do 2 more. Me, me. Your turn. Last one up nice and high. Me, me. Your turn. So give yourself a second, take a sip of water. Again, even if you're not super thirsty, taking a sip of water can be great because similarly to inhaling, it brings everything together and down in the throat, which helps us to just find a little bit more of a relaxed or neutral place. If you're feeling tight in your shoulders or your neck, give yourself a second, stretch them out, roll them out. We want to keep as little tension in the body as we possibly can whenever we're singing. So that includes the shoulders, the neck, the legs. We don't want to lock our knees. We want to have ourselves in a nice, comfortable, and easy standing position so that we're not getting in our own way and we're not hiding any tension from ourselves either. I'm going to introduce one last exercise. So we've done a little bit with our ahs, and I want to do a little bit to help us find a little bit more of a relaxed space in our ahs. So we're going to start with an NG sound. And this is the sound that's at the end of the word sung. So feel free to say that a few times to figure out where you're at. Sung. the back of the tongue is in contact with the back of the throat. And the reason this is helpful is because it can really help us to find tension because there's so much contact back there. So we're going to start nice and low, nice and easy. We're going to do It might feel silly at first. It's a little bit of a nasal sound, so try not to worry too much about the beauty of the tone. But what we do want to feel is that the tongue is sitting in a really relaxed place. The tongue should be flat in the mouth. The back of the tongue should be in contact with the back of the throat, but we shouldn't be working at all other than that with the tongue. So you're going to hear me talk probably about the tongue a lot as we continue through these live stream video lessons. And the reason is because the tongue is a super strong muscle. We use it constantly when we're speaking, and it tends to overwork when we're singing. It tends to flex right underneath here, just behind the point of the chin. So sometimes when I'm singing, I'll take the backs of my fingers and rest them gently underneath my chin so that I can feel if my tongue is flexing or not. I don't encourage self-massage underneath the chin because we have a ton of like salivary glands and lymph nodes and stuff down there, and they can get a little sensitive if we over manipulate them. So resting the backs of the fingers against underneath the chin is totally fine, but I don't encourage like a lot of self-massage. I think it can be really irritating and can get to be irritating pretty quickly. So let's do a little of this, just focusing on keeping the tongue super relaxed. I often tell my students to imagine that you just got like Novocaine and you can't even feel your tongue. Your turn. Let's continue through a few more. Your turn. Remember to drive this totally with the breath. You might be feeling it a little gravelly, not smooth in the sound if you're driving too much from the throat. If you feel like that's happening, feel free to just start again and really start your sound by starting the air. No impulses here. Your turn. Let's continue coming up. Your turn. Such a soft, relaxed tongue. Let's do like 3 or 4 more. Your turn. Your turn. Two more. Nice big inhale. Last one. Your turn. So I know those NGs are a little bit weird. We will see them again because we can build off of them to create a really beautiful ah vowel to help us keep our tongue relaxed, to help us find enough space in the back of the throat. So if you don't feel used to them today, it's okay. You will get used to them. If you're feeling a little frustrated because you're feeling like this video is moving too quickly quickly, or like I'm not able to address exactly the tension that you're experiencing, consider signing up for some one-on-one lessons. It's much easier for me to respond when I can hear, and I'm totally happy to take on new students. And we are running a 25% off special for your first month. So there's a link in the comments to last week's lesson if you want to go back and review. And if not, happy singing. I hope you enjoyed this week's lesson, and I'll see you all again at 4 o'clock next week. Thanks so much. Have a good week. Bye-bye.